Welcome to this video update from the Housing Alliance of PA. My name is Brian Fuss, the Policy and Program Director at the Housing Alliance. So my hope is every third week, I will be presenting an overview of the month's legislative agenda, noting some national, state, and budgetary updates. So let's start with some national updates. First, nationally, the one of the most important things that came out was the U.S. Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance FAQ has been updated. It was updated on the 22nd of February. This gives some guidance to counties and states on how to spend the December 2020 money from the federal government. Basically, there's no change in who is eligible for the assistance. According to the FAQ, individuals within the household has qualified for unemployment benefits or experienced a reduction in household income, incurred significant expenses indirectly or directly because of COVID, and individuals within the household can demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability, and the household has a household median income at 80% AMI. There is still flexibility for an applicant to certify their income. Grantees may be flexible with the documentation they require. So it can be photocopies or digital photography of documents, emails, or attestation from employers, landlords, caseworkers. So we'll say that the attestation is actually required by the applicant. For the statewide program and the territories, policies need to be documented also on how you're prioritizing certain households. And again, I can't state this enough, an attestation is actually required for the applicant. Grantees, whether it's the state or the county or the city, should adopt policies and procedures addressing how they will determine the presence of unsafe or unhealthy living conditions and what evidence of risk to accept. So you get to determine that as a grantee. Utilities are included to be paid, providing there is support by a bill, invoice, or evidence of payment to the provider. Also, relocation is now covered under housing stability services. Now, the internet may be covered, but there's a caveat to that. A caveat is this: internet service provided to a residence is related to housing and is in many cases a vital service. Given that coverage of internet would reduce the amount of funds available for rental assistance, grantees should adopt policies that govern in what circumstances that they will determine that covering the cost would be appropriate. So basically, they're saying that any of the jurisdictions, any of the grantees got money can actually decide if they are going to spend it on telecommunications and or internet. And as we currently know now, the statewide program actually specifically in the legislation does not allow for internet payments. A rental in a federal program actually can apply, providing it's just for the renter's portion of the monthly federal subsidy. So if a renter gets $100 off $150 and they're behind in that $50 that they owe, then that means that they are eligible for that rental assistance for that $50. So the FAQ really gives us more clarity on spending down the December 2020 funds. The Housing Alliance continues to work with the Department of Human Services at the state level and the different grantees who received the money directly from the federal government, so that we can ensure that this money actually gets to the tenants and landlords as they need it. In addition, we are now also expecting another round of money coming from the federal government. The American Rescue Plan is the $1.9 trillion budget reconciliation bill being debated in the House, and hopefully there'll be an up and down vote around the 26th of February, which is from this date, Friday. So some of the parts of this bill, there's a lot of parts, of course. One of the big discussions right now is the raising of the minimum wage, and the parliamentarian is still trying to work that out, whether that's going to be allowed or not. But what we do know is that there's going to be $4.5 billion to help families with heating and cooling costs, basically LIHEAP. There's going to be an additional $19.5 billion for emergency rental assistance. There's going to be $5 billion for emergency vouchers, $5 billion for homeless prevention services, including construction of affordable housing, 9.961 billion for homeowners assistance, and 5 billion for utility assistance. I will say that the December 2020 money did actually did not have in there money for homeowners. So we are keeping an eye on that because we know that homeowners are also needing some help. So we will have more updates on that as soon as we hear from federally what's happening. But again, it does look like it will get an up and down vote, at least on Friday. So as soon as those updates become available, we will actually share more of them, including the process for getting the money from the statewide rental assistance program from the previous December 2020 relief fund. So, certainly not to be outdone, as in DC, Harrisburg is busy too, a lot with budget hearings. So we are in February. As you know, this is budget season. The Wolf administration is focusing on higher education for the most part, and his spending plan is about $37.8 billion. The Commonwealth requires a balanced budget, as actually many states do. And so in order to get the expenditures and all of the initiatives that Governor Wolf wants to see and to ensure that there's a balanced budget, new revenues will be raised via increase in taxes, including the legalizing of marijuana. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Currently, revenue, aging, corrections, state, environmental protections, community and economic development, general services, and transportation. They had their budget hearings already, and also the independent fiscal office completed their hearing. So the Department of Community and Economic Development, like I said, had their budget hearings. there was certainly questions about the Keystone communities and their neighborhood assistance program. And so just so we understand, the Keystone communities is really designed to encourage the creation of partnerships between public and private sectors, and that will actually help the growth and stability of neighborhoods and communities. And so there needs to be a designation through the Keystone Community program as either Main Street, Elm Street, Enterprise Zone, or just a community. There's a bunch of flexible tools in there in order to help different municipalities create much more of a vibrant and social and economic diverse area that is focused on quality of life. So it looks like that the governor would like to cut that about 74%. It's a little under 74%. That gave cause for some. And then Act 47, which is funds for distressed municipalities. Some of the work we do in blight is related to this money. That is going to be level funded. And so there was certainly a discussion by some of the representatives about whether that needed to be increased considering what was going on in the Commonwealth due to the COVID pandemic. Also, the Independent Financial Office and the Wolf Administration's Department of Revenue kind of differed a little bit on estimates about 500 million. So the Revenue Secretary noted that the difference was based on a May revenue number, but revised estimates show a surplus. But what they will say is that we need to be cautious because that really depends on a couple of things. Depends on what the government response is to states and municipalities. And it also assumes that we're not going into a recession. And some of that money certainly was propped up by the federal money that we got for COVID. So there is a lot more. Senate will be having their budget hearings starting in March, and then it will be discussions together for the budget and putting the budget together, and hopefully before July, when the new budget cycle begins. And then that just brings us to our last update, which is the General Assembly update. Some of the different legislation we're looking at. Let me do a small disclaimer, which is this is just some of the legislation that we're looking at. We will actually say if we have a position on any of these. I just am doing this to give information. You can watch our emailers and our newsletter and stuff for more action if we would like to do action around any of these legislative, any of these bills. So right now on consumer affairs, we have at least two bills. HB 328 is during COVID, it is requiring that landlords give tenants a payment plan before going to eviction. So a landlord has to offer a payment plan. Again, that is in consumer affairs, has been there for a bit. That's not surprising since the House right now is doing budget hearings. HB 329, which is also in Consumer Affairs Committee, says that during the pandemic and during the emergency declaration, that there'll be no late fees charged for charged to tenants from landlords. Then we have, of course, in Urban Affairs Committee, we have HB 264, which is pre-registration of bidders. So this has to do with the blight work that we do. And so this will require that in order for a company to bid or an individual to bid on a property that is distressed and that is possibly slated for blight mitigation, that they have a pre-registration for that. Also, corollary sort of to that is HB 372, which requires a municipality to register the foreclosed properties within the municipality simply for maintenance issues and maintenance concerns. And then I forgot HB 517 is also in Consumer Affairs. It is again towards the pandemic and the emergency declaration. There would be no utility fee hikes during the pandemic. Basically, the emergency declaration of the pandemic, and with PUC, which is Pennsylvania's Utility Commission. And then finally, of course, HB 330 is that creates a eviction mediation court, and that has gone to judiciary. So that's what's happening on the House side. Again, not much is happening since it is they're doing budget hearings. We expect that the budget hearings will be over in the first week, around the first week of March. So therefore, we will be watching to see if any of this legislation moves out of committee. On the Senate side, the Senate is actually meeting. I believe they're meeting. They met yesterday with 22nd, and they're meeting today, the 23rd. One of I think the legislation that we're watching is SB 154. It increases the amount of money that goes to distressed properties. And it was last session, and was SB 570. And so that is in community economic and recreational development. So that is in that committee. We are watching that because Senate is in session, and to see if it goes up for consideration either this week or during the next time they meet. Again, I want to say that this is a small sampling of what we're looking at. It was impossible to write them all down, and that this does not mean that the Housing Alliance is either opposing or supporting. We're just giving information. So I hope you like the update. We're going to try to do this every single month, and hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at brian@housingalliancepa.org. Thank you.